This episode of Future Construct is supported by Applied Software. We would like to thank them so much for supporting us. Applied Software is really on a mission to transform industries. They empower their clients and champion innovation with real-world expert consultants. So to reach them, you go to asti.com, that's ASTI.com, and please tell them that we at Future Construct and BIM Designs sent you. Thanks so much. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. I am Amy Peck, I am your host of Future Construct. And today I actually have one of my good friends and colleagues, Joanna Popper, who is the global head of go-to-market at HP. Hi Joanna, welcome.
Hello, it's great to be here with you.
Yeah, we haven't seen each other in quite a while, but Joanna and I have
not
known each
live,
other for a
not
while.
live. Not
Exactly. So tell us a little bit about your role at HP to get started.
Sure. So thanks for having me here. It's great to be here with you and get a chance to catch up, even if it's through a podcast and not at all the great events we used to go to together and all the great fun we used to have together in the previous version of the world. So my name is Joanna Popper and I'm at HP. I've been at HP 3 years now. I focus on our go-to-market for virtual reality. When I first joined HP, I focused on location-based entertainment. And then about a year and a half ago, I expanded my role into some of our other sectors as well and focusing on our go-to-market for our new products. And prior to that, I was at NBC Universal for about 8.5 years, leading marketing for one of the brands, as well as some other companies.
So you have global in your title, and you are probably one of the most well-traveled people I've ever met. So, because you really do have a global perspective on some of the technology and how, VR in particular has evolved. So what are some of the trends that you've been seeing sort of pre-pandemic, and then how has that shifted post-pandemic?
Good question. So, well, pre-pandemic in virtual reality, we were seeing a lot of focus on training, and the areas we were focusing on were the use cases around learning, collaborating, creating, and connecting. And particularly in the industries or in the use cases for training, location-based entertainment, product development, architecture, engineering, construction, healthcare and education. And what we've seen during the pandemic and through the pandemic is great acceleration of interest in all of those use cases. So in learning, throughout this time, we've seen in many areas about 80 to 90% of students are no longer in classrooms, and educators are not in classrooms. We've seen that 30 to a quarter to a third of workers think that they will be working remotely even into next year. And throughout that, businesses and organizations still need ways to connect, to collaborate, to train, to teach, so we've seen VR really taking a prominent role in that, or a larger role, an accelerating role in that throughout this time.
I think that's interesting. I think you're right. I think, a lot of companies, especially those who were already maybe in kind of POC and a very early pilot stage, have now sort of fast-tracked some acceleration and deployment. And you have a beautiful new headset out as HP, not you personally, but and I had tried the first Reverb, which was a beautiful piece of hardware, but these next kind of 2 versions are pretty incredible. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Sure. We have the HP Reverb G2. It is a new headset that we've created together with Valve and Microsoft. It's our 3rd headset with Microsoft and our 1st headset with Valve. We are really excited about it. The enthusiasm for it and the interest in it has been incredibly strong. There's a couple of things that make it so special, why people are so excited about it. One is around the immersive quality. So the we have these brand new lenses that are designed by Valve. You know, Valve, for anyone who doesn't know, is one of the leaders in this industry, a great gaming company, but they also were pioneers in VR. And most of the early headsets for the last 5-6 years have had some type of Valve technology, or most of the leading headsets. So we're thrilled to be working with them now. So the lenses have been designed by Valve. They're 2160 by 2160, but they're brand new, and they really focus on, you know, that great resolution and great visual quality. So brighter, more clarity. You know, when we hear people talk about them who've been in the headset, they say things like, my eyes feel like they're in a warm bath. My eyes are finally comfortable in VR. Or, you know, people say that they're playing games again for the first time. You know, not for the first time. They're playing games that they played previously, but it feels like for the first time, it feels like a brand new experience, that they may be in a game and stop and stare at a blade of grass for 10 minutes and not even realize, because they're so fascinated with how good it looks in VR, and they never imagined something would look like that in VR. So it's really been interesting to see the reaction from people as they come into the headset. So the immersive quality is one of and the clarity is one of the major attributes. The audio is really great. The audio is fairly similar to the Valve Index. So if you like the Valve Index, you'll like this audio. It's spatial, 3D, off your ear. So it's more comfortable for, you know, wearing for longer times. And then the headset is designed for comfort. So you know, more of the weight is on the back so that it feels more comfortable. You don't have that forward facing sort of drop down effect. And then it's relatively lightweight, and it comes with a fabric cushion, and there will be, you know, a multi-user PU leather version as well, or gaskets available in the future as well. But that fabric is really, really comfortable. And then, you know, it's a Windows mixed reality headset, so it's inside out tracked, which makes it, you know, easy to set up, and no outside base stations or anything that are needed. But then there's an easy bridge between Windows mixed reality and Steam that you can access to grab all your great content that's on SteamVR.
That's great. And so, you know, I know that also you've focused on a lot of partnerships with some of the solution providers as well. And I think that's one of the most important components for companies. And you know, and I think, you know, HP has been really smart about, you know, thinking about, you know, how are companies going to use this? Not just, here's a beautiful piece of hardware, have at it. You know, you're actually partnering with some really incredible solution providers. And so, you know, since our audience is largely AEC, can you talk about some of the solutions that are out there, and maybe some use cases or case studies with some of your enterprise clients as well?
Sure. And just to go back, so you had asked me about the 2 headsets we announced.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I talked about one, so let me just talk about the second one. And I'll answer some of your question through that headset as well. So that's the first headset that we announced, and we've been shipping, and, you know, a lot more to come on that front. And then we also announced a second headset, and the second headset is called the HP Reverb G2 Omnicept edition. And so the HP Reverb G2 is targeted towards consumers, you know, using it for entertainment or gaming, and then it's targeted towards businesses. The second headset is actually targeted towards enterprise and developers. And so it takes, you know, a lot of the great, you know, the base of the HP Reverb G2, and adds to it some sensors such as eye tracking, pupillometry, face camera, and heart rate tracking. And so we call it a solution, and so that, you know, I wanted to bring it up as you asked about solutions, because it takes there's a hardware aspect, there's a software aspect, and then there's the third-party apps that are going to be built for it. So, you know, I just talked about the hardware. On the software side, we are building a variety of SDKs. The first one that will launch with the headset is around cognitive load. So it's really targeted for people in the learning or education space. An example would be, say, you know, if you are training on learning how to fly, and the instructor would be able to look at what you're doing and see, based on your reaction, you know, using the SDK for cognitive load, Are you, are you overstimulated? Are you bored? Are you freaked out? Are you scared? Do we need to ratchet it up? Do we need to ratchet it down? And so that instructor would be able to offer you a much more customized learning environment. When we know VR already, that VR is so great for learning, that the retention is so strong, and now we're adding that customization layer on top of it. And so that's the software aspect. And we're going to add additional SDKs in the future beyond cognitive load, but that's the first one that it will launch with. And then the third aspect is there are third-party ISVs and content creators and developers that we're working with who are creating solutions specifically for this headset. So we're working with Thea, who's in the AEC environment. We're working with Pixo, who's in the training environment. We're working with Ovation VR, who does public speaking training, as well as a slew of other partners. And so we're really excited to see what they're going to be offering using the solution that takes that next level of really making VR more of a two-way street, and so that you can customize your experience.
I think that's amazing, and I've seen Ovation VR, and I can imagine now that extra layer of really sort of measuring how you're interacting with an audience. Are you getting nervous? And we all have tics that we happen to do when we're on stage. And so, yeah, I think that's phenomenal. I know Thea well and Pixo very well. They're really, truly amazing. I would like to thank the team at Applied Software for supporting this episode of the Future Construct podcast. With solutions for really any modern project, Applied Software is on a mission to transform industries by empowering their clients and being the champions of innovation with real-world expert consultants. They have a comprehensive array of solutions for AEC, MEP, and manufacturing with a singular focus, helping you achieve higher performance. So with software, training, support, consulting, and custom development, Applied Software has you covered for all of your workflow needs. And BIM Designs is proud to be a client and partner of Applied Software. So you can reach them at asti.com, it's ASTI.com, and please let them know that we here at Future Construct and BIM Designs sent you. So let's kind of just talk overarching, again, with that global perspective that you've kind of gained, how is the traction now? And so we've been seeing that, uptick in interest. Are you finding, differences between, say, North America and Europe and Asia in terms of what they're focusing on and then how quickly they're deploying?
It's a good question. So, I would say, well, right now, most of the world has different, is dealing with the global pandemic of COVID-19. And so clearly there are certain regions of the world that have been more impacted, or the time frame of where they've been impacted is different. So there's places that we work with where even our own office is half of or most of our engineering team is in Taiwan, or a portion. I don't think half or most. Neither of those are actually accurate, but like a big portion of our engineering team for our VR team is in Taiwan, and they had 2 weeks where they couldn't go to the office, whereas we still have not gone back to our offices. And the roadmap on when we're going to go back out to our offices is unknown, and that's the case in much of Europe. That's the case in the United States. So that has an impact in terms of VR in some ways. In some ways, it can propel the interest for VR, and then for other parts of VR, it may be slowing it down. So you see some businesses that are looking for, how do we stay connected? How do we collaborate? How are we using creation tools? How are we all going to go in and track, doing product development or an AEC project? Okay, let's turn to VR and do it, and then maybe they'll still be doing it from their homes. And so we see it's been interesting to watch those trends. And then of course, location-based entertainment, which we talked about up top a little bit. We see places that have been open this whole time practically. We've seen places that have been reopening slowly, and we see places that haven't been able to open again.
Yeah, and that's been interesting too, with LBVR, because they have that kind of added component. There's very high overhead. People are nervous about going into these environments. Do you see those, more broadly here in the US, some of those opening up more quickly? I have heard of a few that have actually sort of shifted focus and become sort of training centers, or centers where they can, bring small groups of people together, either for team building or small classes. Are you seeing that trend with some of your customers?
Well, we've seen a number of different trends. So, in March and April, most people are closed around the world as the world started to grapple with, what is this? What is going to happen? And then we saw Europe start to reopen. And the interesting thing about Europe was that we saw that people were really interested in coming back. And that, for the places that were able to reopen, their numbers were quite strong. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I think one, during those 2 months, a lot of the companies kind of stopped, took looked at strategies, looked at what they needed to do. So shifted some operations, shifted some content, shifted, how they talk to their audiences about sanitization, shifted group sizes that they would put together, created things like contactless check-in. And so, took that opportunity to really make their operations appropriate for today's climate. But what's interesting, I think, is that VR and LBVR, compared to some of these other venues that we go to be entertained, like a concert or a cinema or a theme park, in a way, you're almost naturally socially distanced because of the limitations of throughput and because of the technology. And so in most cases, you're in a group of 4 to 8. You're not in a group of 300. Or you're not in a group of a couple thousand, like in a cinema or like in a concert or, in a theme park or even a big arcade. And so in some ways they've been able to, it becomes almost almost a safer place and perceived as a safer place because the family will come knowing it's just going to be that family there. Nobody else will be there around them, and they'll be able to, have this great, exhilarating family fun together. Especially in a moment, there are not a lot of other things that they can be doing together, and so we've seen, some benefit of that in some areas, and then, but as we see different spikes and different governments and local officials take different actions. We've kind of seen some the curves going in different directions. Yeah.
So, we're in a group and sometimes we all meet in alt space or there's other events going on, and we're kind of early adopters, right? I think I would call us early adopters. Do you see like a shift or like that tipping point coming where maybe more people are involved in these sort of social VR constructs that'll start to kind of move into enterprise?
Yes, I do. I think that, we're starting to see more and more, people, and especially now, come to some of the consumer events, people who had no interest in VR or didn't know much about VR have, bought headsets to come to film festivals or bought headsets to come to Burning Man or bought headsets to, which was offered in virtual reality, or bought headsets to exercise in VR because they can't go to their gym anymore. So we see that on the consumer side. And then we also see that people are looking for new ways. There's a Zoom fatigue, right? There's some level of, as Noni de la Peña, the godmother of VR, always says, the world's not flat. Why should your media be? Why should your media be? Right? I might have butchered the way she says it, but she says something like that. The world's not flat. Why should your media be? And here we are, on flat screens. So there is something that is really beneficial about this technology, of course, that, it's much more accessible for people right now. It's, and people are more used to it, but then, and given the expressiveness of our, there is some level of connection that we can have that you can't have in VR. But on the other hand, in VR, we're not just little bobbleheads in most instances, right? We can run around, we can go off in a little group, you can have a side chat, you can play games, you can review your product design, you can go into a world, you can go into the new house that you're building and decide that the walls would be better off in blue or red or white or wallpaper. You can decide on the marble floor, and things that right now we aren't able to do in the real world, right? And so I think that's where VR is particularly strong. It's particularly strong at creating worlds that may not exist, or worlds that you don't have access to, or worlds that where you're using that real-time engine and 3D that you want to change like on the spot and have that experience. And so I think there's a consumer trend, but there's also a really strong enterprise trend that are going to both help this business move forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I see that kind of converging as well. And, I'm always curious about, how do we replicate again? You mentioned earlier, we don't really know when we're going back to work. And I think the one thing that we do miss and we haven't been able to replicate are those kind of water cooler moments.
Yeah.
And, early on, my team, we started, having sort of Friday happy hours, right? Just social. Mm-hmm. In the same environment that we used for our work meetings, and there were whiteboards and there were ways to kind of bring in, 3D objects and actually have our meetings and have sort of functional work meetings. But then we decided that we were just missing that kind of being ridiculous. We would all bring in like ridiculous assets or memes that we had seen or objects that were just sort of funny for the week, or we're just like, all right, we're just going to actually have fun. And I think it was really healthy for us to be able to still have that connection. And do you see us really being able, like, that's to me, like, how do we solve that problem of those kind of just little happenstance interactions?
It's so interesting you say that, right after we went into COVID, our team started doing what we called VR Hang. And we invited, tons of people in the company, not just our VR team, to come and hang out in VR with us. And so we went to Altspace, we went to Big Screen, we went to Mozilla Hubs, we went to VR Chat, and many, many more. We did one of our product managers retired during this time. We did his retirement party in there. We did a whole slew of events, and I'm missing a lot of the different venues that we went to, but we went to a whole bunch. And there is something fun, about having that water cooler moment that, I'm walking by, let me ask you a question, because when you're in a Zoom, there's something so, okay, it's usually a group, it's a bunch of people, there's no side chat, there's no, maybe you chat with somebody a bit, but, everyone's a little bit on. It's in a way a little bit artificial, right? And I was on a Zoom last night with I'm in this group called Chief, which is women who are leaders, coming together to talk about things in their lives, and three of them during this time period in our small group had started new big jobs. One runs a studio, one is a CHRO, so head of HR at a company, and I can't remember what the third one did, but so they took on these big jobs during this time, and they've never met anyone that they work with. They've never met the teams, they never met their bosses in many cases. And in some cases, they're coming into teams that have all had that, that had worked together and met together. And they were all really grappling with, how do I create those sort of more real connections, and how do I build those relationships with, is it only through Zoom? Is it through Slack? Is it through, and they all had different answers and different things that they were trying. But I do think there's something interesting about VR that connects you in a way where that you kind of feel like you've been together in a deeper way than you do in Zoom. And Liz Rosenthal, who you know, who runs Venice Film Festival, she and I have been in a number of events together through this time period. And the last time I saw her, she said, I really feel like we hung out for real yesterday. Of course, she's we're in a completely different continent. And because we were hanging out in VR chat. And so, there's still gaps, right? The expressiveness in those platforms is still early days. And, that's something that, things like Omnicept in the future we'll be looking towards, and I'm sure other devices as well. But certainly the HP Reverb G2 Omnicept edition with facial camera, that's going to be something that probably down the road people start using for moments like that, to give that expressiveness, to give that emotion. And so I think that there's a real opportunity.
I think you're right, and yeah, I think that facial expression, I think it's coming, and studies are have shown that when you meet someone in VR, even if you haven't met them in person, often you are actually able to recognize them when you meet them in real life without even being introduced, because you recognize their hand gestures, you recognize just sort of the physicality, you recognize their voice. So we're able to connect the dots to a degree. And then, like you said, the sort of facial tracking where you start to really bring those nuanced expressions in, I think this is going to be kind of a game changer there as well.
Yeah.
All right. So
have you been spending a lot of time in virtual platforms?
Yes and no. I actually just moved, and so I haven't set up my VR space, because you need your VR space. I haven't set it up yet.
Are you in Europe these days, or are you back in the US?
No, I'm back in the Bay Area, but I moved from Tiburon down to Woodside just temporarily before I go to Tbilisi in January. So I'm excited about that. So I will be setting up, I'm going to take some time over the holidays and get my VR area set up so I don't break any lamps, which I'm excited about. So I asked this question to everyone and really looking towards the future. And I know you spent a lot of time kind of thinking about where all of this is going, but this question is more just about you personally, looking at the whole landscape of technology, and in 2030, 2040, 2050, if you could build your absolute number one gadget just for you, what would it be and what would it do?
2030, 2040, 2050.
It could just be one gadget.
Yeah. Well, I certainly am ready for my autonomous car that takes me everywhere that I need it to go. But I'm hopeful that will come before then. So we have to go a little bit. And I'm certainly very excited for our smart glasses, that look like the glasses you're wearing, but do everything
exactly
and more that all of our VR devices do today. But I'm also hopeful maybe that will come before then. And so what do we really need in the world? Well, I mean, this is kind of outside the realm of what we do for work, but I guess, although in a way it's something that HP does, but I'm thinking about, what, not like a Juicero or whatever, like what silly thing would make my life, 1% easier every day. And Juicero is obviously a silly example, but, I'm thinking, what is there something along the lines of, I'm thinking like, a 3D printer that would basically be able to create whatever is needed. So if, if somebody needs food, if somebody needs water, if somebody needs shelter, it's kind of like, it's in a way, I'm creating a 3D printer that acts as a genie in a bottle. So
I love that. You just sort of, you blink it into existence.
Yeah. So for people who, they're hungry, or they don't have shelter, or they don't have, that's what's coming to mind right now.
I love that.
Maybe the 3D printer has vaccines, all the things we really need. Right
now. Yeah. Well, I think actually that's coming where, you can actually start to have a customized formula based on your own DNA, and then 3D print
exactly
the prescription, which is
the prescription. Yeah. So, and then, and for, on a lighter note for that, for those of us who travel all the time, or used to travel all the time, like you and I, you wouldn't have to bring anything, because like your 3D printer would just.
Yeah. I think we both need a teleportation device for sure.
Time travel.
That would be amazing. Well, yeah. Joanna, it's a pleasure as always. It's actually so nice to see you. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it.